Alrighty. First off, I'm going to show you guys DM Carbon Fire, which is one of our deathmatch levels. But it illustrates a number of things that we think are important in science fiction games. Science fiction is a very liberating environment to use, but at the same time, it's a pretty alienating one for people who aren't especially into it, or they're not seeing things that they've ever seen before. And so what we wanted to do with our science fiction was make sure that it was all grounded in what felt like a real environment. The first thing that we did was that we determined that this level would take place on a Leandry world. And a Leandry world is this sort of high-tech environment that you see here that is sort of futuristic, but at the same time somewhat recognizable. And this is a robot factory, and that's something that we also find very useful to do, is find a purpose for the environment that we're in, and then have that actually contribute to the design of the level. Now, something that we decided to do was have a number of levels take place in this world. And so here you can see certain landmarks, like this shield that goes overhead. All Leandry worlds have this sort of protective shield over it.
Look out to the horizon like that, so you can see the shield effect.
Yeah, there you go. And so what this allowed us to do was you're going to see other levels that have this sort of environment, and it really made it feel like a real place. And that's something that we find really combats that alienation that people sometimes have with science fiction. Another thing that we decided to do was our initial pass at all the materials we were pretty happy with, but at the same time they felt too clean. They felt like they felt rendered. And so we started what we call the process of grungification. And by grungifying things, we were adding the dirt that sort of collected in the aspects of it. Things were scuffed up. And besides making these environments feel more real, there were great examples of what Unreal Engine 3 does well, which is detailed lighting on very high detailed environments. And so that's something that we were really happy with the process of. And we're going and we're making sure that all our levels have those types of grungification.
Show us some weapons, Jeff.
Weapons are the same thing. Everybody knows what an M16 should look like, should sound like, but nobody knows what a link gun should look like or sound like. And so the way we approached that was making sure all our weapons look like they worked, that you can see the internal workings of them. And so here, the link gun primary fire, you can see a lot of particle effects interacting with the weapon. And when you alt fire, the whole thing sort of opens up, and you can, it's not real engineering, but it looks like it could be plausible engineering. The shock rifle is definitely a franchise favorite for Unreal Tournament, and we took that same sort of principle and applied it to this. You can see sort of one particle effect running along the beam when you're doing the primary fire, and all our weapons have alternate fires, and so when you do that, the whole thing really charges up, and you can do combos, which is a very efficient way of taking out your opponents. The last weapon I'll show you, these are some prototype weapons, is the rocket launcher. Every UT has had a rocket launcher. And the one thing that we wanted to do with this, besides having the particles sort of interact with the environment, but have the whole thing look like, have the individual rockets loading in, and having all that stuff look very functional and working. And that was something that was important to us.
Jeff, can you give us an example of something we've done, say with the weapon in UT 2007 that's an upgrade from past versions?
Yeah, we wanted to revisit all the weapons. One nice thing about having primary fire and alternate fire in all our weapons is that we could explore and experiment with those weapons without changing fundamentally the way they work. The rocket launcher now has a grenade mode, so in addition to be able to shoot one rocket or three in a spread or a spiral, you can actually not have them shoot out at all, but just sort of bounce out of the environment, bounce out into the environment, lay traps, things like that.
We had that in the original, didn't we?
It was in the original Unreal, the 8-ball, and so for fans of the series, it's a nice tip of the hat.
Yeah, people love that stuff. So this is another one of these really unpolished levels that we put together as more to test concepts, gameplay, weapons, vehicles. Those of you who played UT 2003 and 4 will recognize this as a Torland clone, but again, this is visually completely unpolished.
We introduced Onslaught, which was a vehicle-focused game type in Unreal Tournament 2004, and we're bringing that game type into 2K7. What I'd like to show you guys now are 3 vehicles we have never demonstrated publicly before, and show you some of the philosophies we're using on these vehicles. The first one I'd like to show you is the Paladin. The Paladin is primarily a defensive weapon. Its main goal is to escort people and defend objectives. And so it's got a primary fire, a weapon that's, you know, pretty useful, but by far its most important application is its shield. And the shield, besides being a fun gameplay mechanic, really illustrates what Unreal Engine 3 does well, which is great lighting on detailed.
As the sun rises, critics are aware that net resources have already captured the facility 7 million pounds. The security bridge and the traditional processing facility continues to function to restore power to these objectives by delivering the power to this conduit.
Guys.